We all want to be that person who doesn't let people or situations bother them. That person who doesn't seem to react where others usually would. Yet most of us get angry, anxious or overwhelmed more often than we'd like to. Nowadays we are told to not suppress our emotions, and this is a good thing, but the opposite extreme is being too emotional, overreacting and ruining your life in ways that you probably don't see right now. More stress, more relationship issues, more work issues, and overall, less happiness. There are ways to be less reactive, but from my experience, the best way is to accept reality for what it is. To accept people and situations for what they are, and to accept that you can't control them. This makes your expectations more realistic instead of idealistic. You know that although difficult people and situations are inevitable, it's how you navigate them that matters. This makes you more logical and less emotional. So in this video, I'm going to elaborate on why acceptance makes you less emotionally reactive, and of course, how you can learn to accept reality. When we emotionally react, it's usually because we're too attached to how we think things should be. This exam or interview should go this way, or this person should treat me in this way. When these expectations are not met, we naturally become frustrated and disappointed, to say the least. A common example nowadays would be toxic positivity, where people continuously expect good vibes only, without accepting the reality that painful and negative emotions and experiences are a natural part of life. And so they become anxious, ashamed or guilty as they constantly deny this reality. Now, you may not be on that extreme, but the point is that our expectations shape our desires. So if those expectations are unrealistic, then we're more likely to emotionally react because we don't get what we want. So this naturally leads to the question, how can we make our expectations more realistic? And the answer is by accepting reality. But most of us fail to do this. We instead project our own desires, assumptions and beliefs onto a situation or person, rather than seeing it for what it really is. And to an extent, it is normal to do this because we're all humans with our own desires, needs and expectations of how things should be. But we also have the power to change how we view the world once we understand that this directly affects how emotional we become in response to it. I'd like to believe that I'm now at a point where I feel calm in most situations, especially ones where I previously would have reacted emotionally to. And when I compare how I view the world now to, say, a few years ago, it's night and day. Because I now accept my own limitations and that I'm not always going to get what I want. I now accept that people are who they are and not who I want them to be. And overall, I now accept that I am responsible for how I feel. It's not that acceptance will magically make you immune to pain or negative emotions. And acceptance is not about rolling over and being powerless. It's about acknowledging reality and accepting that things are how they are and not how you want them to be. This makes you less emotional because you can now focus on what is in your control instead of resisting what is not. You may be disappointed or surprised when something happens to you, but you certainly won't be shouting or breaking down. So how can you actually accept reality? There is a practice that has helped me a lot known as negative visualization. I learned this from Stoicism, and the reason it helps is because it prepares you for negative outcomes in life, even if you don't want them to happen. For example, imagining that someone might say something nasty to you today, or you may lose something important to you tomorrow. None of us want these things to happen, but by actually walking through it in your mind and imagining what you do in response, you become more prepared for it, and so it hits you less when it happens. On the other hand, When we have strong emotional outbursts, it's usually because we never imagine that something bad will happen. We instead become stubborn and we have a one-track mind, focusing purely on the best case scenario, which is only what we want. If you imagine the future to be always positive and perfect, and you avoid or deny unpleasant realities, then you're of course going to be emotional when those realities actually occur. Now, it may seem pessimistic to instead imagine negative outcomes, but it's not about getting upset in the present moment and fixating on those things. It's simply about being prepared for them if they happen. And the overall result of this is positive. You gain a better appreciation for what you do have, and you feel more ready for when things do go wrong. You accept the reality that things are not always going to go your way, but you have the power to deal with these situations when they happen. Another way that you can practice acceptance, and something that's helped me, is by looking at your situation from a different perspective. And you don't actually need someone else to do this. You can do it by yourself. It's hard, but you do it by detaching, which is even harder in the heat of the moment, but it's possible with practice. And to make it simpler, just ask yourself 2 questions. How would someone else view my situation? And if my friend or someone I cared about came to me with these problems, what advice would I give them? And this is great because it helps you to see things more objectively. Let's say that you're in a relationship, but it feels off. You feel like you're walking on eggshells a lot of the time, or that it's one-sided. You know deep down that you're being mistreated or that you deserve better, but you can't bear the thought of ending the relationship. So instead, you blame yourself. You deny the reality that it's actually not your fault, and instead you say to yourself, it's going to be okay as long as I behave in a certain way that pleases my partner. Now imagine that someone you care about comes to you and says those exact same things. You're probably going to feel some level of anger for them and tell them that no, it's not okay, because they are being mistreated and it's not their fault. You may even tell them to end the relationship, or to stand up for themselves at the very least and set some boundaries, and then see if their partner respects them. The point is that you can see straight away how differently you'd feel looking at it from a neutral perspective, because it's far easier to see the reality of the situation. So overall, practice accepting things for how they are instead of how you want them to be, and do this often, with things like losing your internet all the way up to losing a person. You'll find that you have emotional outbursts far less because you understand just how futile they are. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and I'll see you in my next one.